Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today we continue the music theory series right here at BusyWorksBeats.com/music theory. Today we're going to focus on how to make better melodies. There are 3 techniques, very simple. I'm going to go over the list, then we're going to break it down and give you practical stuff so it's not just like wish-wash. First step, you need to close the gaps in your melody. When I hear melodies from producers, they're like this. You know, the notes are way too far apart. Okay, imagine trying to leap a big chasm. You know, it's in music, you have to be sure that the listener can expect the next note. If you're playing notes that are super far apart, you know, they're not going to be able to expect the next note and be, you know, make the music more predictable. That's the first step. Now I'm going to go through the application of that in a second. Second is you need to think before you write. You know, as producers who have access to just clicking in notes, we kind of get in the habit of just clicking stuff in without really thinking about what we're doing. So we're just clicking stuff in. Now that sounds cool, but in your head, what was the beat that was going on in your head? It was like, now here's another mistake a lot of people make. They hear the melody in their head and then they try starting to make the melody on the downbeat. Sometimes your melody starts way before the downbeat. And the downbeat is when the metronome starts on that first bar. So my melody might be like this. Let's just record nothing, but it's going to count in. So my melody might be like, I went to the, I went, but you see how my melody started before it actually started going? And a lot of people do not even realize that the melody starts way before the downbeat. And that ends up throwing off your melody for when you try to write it in. You're like, what's going on? My melody sounds so offbeat. It's because it starts before the downbeat. So you need to, instead of starting your melody over here, try starting it before the next bar. So move your notes over here and then start your melody. That way it gives time for the melody to build in, you know, and so on and so forth. So that's another mistake I see a lot. Thirdly, for your melody, start using your chords. You can, you know, I'm going to use my sustain pedal here. You don't need one, but you can use your chord as a melody simply by playing the notes separately. So let me just, and it sounds like a melody. Okay, so we need to start thinking differently about music so we can really amplify it. So let's go over how to close gaps. So let's make a really awkward, weird melody that I would hear in some demo tracks. Now I'm so used to making melodies that make sense. It's kind of hard to think outside of the box and make it sound weird. So the first thing you want to do when you start singing, now this is actually kind of normal. It's not really out of the ordinary. But instead of using stuff that's, the first technique you want to do is stay within 1 octave. What is an octave? It's the root note or whichever note is your bottom note. And going up the keyboard, you want to stay within that range from G to G. This is not, you know, a rule, okay? This is just to help you get started and make your melodies make sense, okay? Your melodies should be easy enough to play with one hand, and remember, your melody should be easy enough for other people to play. And that's just playing it with one hand. So this rule helps you create melodies that make sense because you're not jumping a bunch of steps, semitones. So let's write a melody that's inside of this 1 octave. Now we can use that G octave, that's fine. I'm going to make this sound really cheesy and really elementary. But what's the goal? We stay within that octave. Now the amateur producer might take that up an octave. Now in some musical cases, you would go up an octave. It really depends. That's why I'm not saying this is a rule to use all the way across. It's just to help you get started. Staying within 1 octave is going to help you keep that gap tight. Because again, when you're writing melodies, you don't want to jump 1,000 semitones because the listener is not going to expect that melody. You want them to be able to follow along smoothly with your melody as if it's a string that you're following along through a song. You don't want that string to have, gaps in it. You want to keep it steady and flowing. So that's the first step. Close those gaps. Got too much space between your notes. Secondly is to think before you're writing. So if I have a melody in my head, I need to translate that. Boom, 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 boom. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people are like, there's too many notes that are similar in a row. If you look at a lot of vocal melody in pop songs, they play the same exact note over and over and over again. Boom, 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 boom. It's the same note. Now I forgot the melody that I had in my head. Boom, 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 boom. So that's my melody. So don't be afraid to put notes back to back. That's what's in your head. That's what needs to that's what needs to translate into your DAW. Let's turn the volume up. So if it's 6 notes of the same thing, so what? They don't need to be different. Boom, 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 boom. Now this is the best part, because let's say you don't understand music theory. This way you can do it by ear. This is what I used to do when I was a younger producer sitting at my computer desk. I would literally whistle. My mom probably got annoyed, but I would whistle like at 12 a.m., 2 a.m., however late I was up making music. I would whistle out the melody over and over and over again until I fully translated each and every note. That's what you need to do. Remember, your music is translating from an idea into a reality. The computer does not have your idea. You need to tell the computer what your idea is. And sadly, that gets lost in the music we make simply because we get used to habit and drawing in notes. And that's why our drum patterns sound weak as well, because we're not translating what we hear in our head to what makes sense in the DAW, because it's so easy to just type in stuff. Dun, 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 boom, boom, boom. So again, I'm just going by ear. Boom, boom. Also, you want to look at note lengths, another underestimated thing. I'm going dun 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 dun. I'm not going dun dun dun. Okay, so note length is a huge player in translating your ideas. And I would suggest, if you're going to beatbox, record it into audio so you can always reference how you were beatboxing. And you're going to have so many small little changes, you're not even going to realize it. Now, lastly, let's talk about chords, how to make melody from a chord. Let's just keep it really simple. I started off on A. Okay, so we're going to draw an A here for our root note. And let's draw that out. Now, the top chord is going to be A, C, E for A minor. That's what we're playing. All we're doing is just separating those notes. Okay, so instead of playing them all at once, we're going E, C, A. We're just creating a pattern. So once you have your chords, split up the notes, just like a guitar. When you strum chords, it sounds like a melody. Dun, dun, dun. You could strum individual notes of that chord. You don't have to jump around 1,000 frets to get your melody going in, most cases. So let's see the melody here. Okay, so now it sounds more classical. Very classic technique. So boom, boom, boom. Okay, so we're going to take that chord, A, C, E. Now I'm just going down the common chords for the A natural minor scale. Moving around notes, I don't need to move around. Okay, so the next chord we're going to play is G major. You don't have to worry about memorizing these chords unless you just want to follow along. We're going to take those 2 bass notes, copy those over, and G major is going to be G, B, D. So we're going to play D first, then B. Keep the same rhythm. Same technique. Let's go down to F major. This time I'm going to play a major 7 chord. You don't have to worry about the nomenclature right now. I'm just going to copy the first A minor section, hit shift, pull it over, and change our bass notes to F. Now we have another chord. And now I want to create something spicy like dun, dun, dun. Now this one can be different. Now this is where you just get creative, or you could just play the chord, doesn't matter. So I'm going to play the notes E for the bass, and then what will we be playing here? B, C, B. So in short, I'm going to give you the kind of music theory talk, music theory and E's. What we're doing here is playing the fifth of E, which is B. So if you were to draw E, G, B, that would give you E minor. But instead of playing the note G, we're just leaving the third out and playing the fifth. So technically this makes a chord sound. It's not technically a chord because it's two notes, but we're playing the fifth, which is B. So that's why it works. Now we're creating also what's called tension by pulling that up a half step. And it's important in chord progressions to create tension. And then we go over all this stuff at busyworksbeats.com/music theory. We go over chord progressions, bass lines, melodies, circle of fifths, circle of fourths. We explain it all, modes, scales. It's all there, scale degrees. So that's what we explain very easily to you. So 1, 2, boom, boom, boom. Let me just get the timing right. Okay, and then I'm just gonna add the ninth in here just to be different. Now those chords sound like a melody. I'm gonna introduce the bass again just so it has a little more impact. And now we have something that sounds really melodic even though we just use simple chords. If you really want to get expert about it, replay your bass note every time something dramatic up top happens. So boom, dum, boom, boom, dum, boom, and just have the bass play it again. And it's that simple. Those are 3 techniques on how to make better melodies. Continue watching. It's busyworksbeats.com/music theory. I'm going to train you very easily. I break it down very simply. I don't use a bunch of big terms unless we have to. I define those big terms. I get you straight to action so you don't just waste your time reading stuff. Okay, it's not a book, but we do include a chord book, which gives you chord codes. Again, you can learn more at busyworksbeats.com/music theory. But I want you to understand chord progressions, bass lines, melodies, scales, modes, circle of fifths, circle of fourths, how to use it, how to write real songs, song structure. It's all in there. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/music theory. Thanks for watching today. It's busyworksbeats.com.